Okay, hi, welcome in, everybody. Let me clear my throat first. Hi, welcome. Sorry, that was like very froggy how I introed the show. Welcome in. This is The Slate. We are a DraftKings show. We take you up until 6 o'clock on this Thursday, December 22nd. Week 16 in the National Football League begins tonight in the Meadowlands. We've got the Jets and the Jags. It's going to be gross, and it's not just because of the football. The weather is the theme of the week, even though it is the holidays. The weather is not cooperating pretty much across the league, no matter where. If you're in a warm climate, we'll get to that later. Miami and Green Bay, there could be some weather going on there Christmas Day, but Saturday is going to be cold. Arctic blast taking over the NFL. Gary and Thorne is alongside Brendan Glasheen. This, folks, this is a getaway day for DraftKings. If you have not been made aware, we have no programming tomorrow. And I think, don't hold me to this, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. Eamon or Daniel can correct me. We do have the Sweat airing Sunday, but it will be a pre-recorded version, which I think is fair to mention because
I think it's Saturday. I think the Sweat's airing Saturday.
Okay. I think
all the games are on Saturday.
Yes, good point. 11 games Saturday, 3 Sunday. But I bring that up only because lines move, guys get ruled out, so it's impossible to make that a perfect kind of fix. So that's out there. You're aware of that. And then we're going cold. We're going, what's the word I'm looking for? We're going MIA.
Dark?
For the week. What, say the word again?
Going dark.
Yeah. Dark. Yeah. There it is. Thank you. I said, what did I say? Dry? Jesus. Dark. Fine. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Dark. Monday through Friday of next week, and we will be back for New Year's Day, back to the regularly scheduled Sweat on Sunday. So there's the rundown. Got to get that out there in case you're like, well, why are they talking about this line when it moved to this and whatnot, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to cram in as much as we can in the next half hour on this getaway slate day. We will get to Jags and Jets. I suppose we could start there because as Gary had pointed out when we joined the call, line moving on this total, it was at 37.5 today. It was at 39 yesterday. And the line, as far as the spread, is moving in the Jets' direction, Gary, and now at -2.5 against the Jags, who, with their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, he has played phenomenal football the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's statistically been the best quarterback in the NFL. You could make the case. Statistically, it's certainly true, but you could put him right up there with Mahomes and Burrow, the way he's played here the last month of the season. So looking at this game tonight, we got the DFS contest pulled up as well. What comes to mind? What are some of the things you're prioritizing when you look at this game tonight, Jets, Jags?
Yeah, I mean, from a betting perspective, I could see how that under was pretty enticing. It was up around 39 the last 24 hours, now down to 36.5. Every report we seem to get about what the weather could look like tonight at the Meadowlands does not seem overly optimistic. Heavy winds, lots of rain. I think it's almost like it's underlined in the articles, like 100% chance of rain. This isn't a Dolphins-Bills scenario from last weekend where we were promised snow and we didn't get snow to the last 5 minutes. It's going to rain and rain a lot during this game. And then you've just got a team that's kind of built for this. I think the Jets would almost prefer this sort of weather, this sort of setup. Most of their games, especially the ones started by Zach Wilson, tend to be pretty low scoring, tend to be possession by possession, grinding it out, field position, special teams. I think there was even a graphic prior to the Brock Wright 51-yard game-winning touchdown for the Lions last week that was something along the lines of, in Zach Wilson's past 2 starts, including that start at the time against the Lions, the Jets defense had not allowed a touchdown. Like that's how much they've stepped up with Zach Wilson under center. So I can see how this game sort of just sets up perfectly to be low scoring. You even think about the biggest deficiency the Jaguars have as a team. Their pass defense is terrible. Yeah. They come into week 16 ranked 32nd in the league, dead last by DVOA at defending the pass. From a fantasy perspective, they've been very generous to opposing quarterbacks so far this season, but you'd have to think that weakness is neutralized somewhat by the weather conditions they'll be playing in tonight. Going up against a mistake-prone quarterback like Zach Wilson, you'd have to think the elements maybe increase the likelihood that he makes those mistakes. So, yeah, I get it. I get why people think this is going to be a slog. I get why they think it's going to be low scoring. Heck, I understand why the Jets have gone from being a 1-point home underdog to 2.5-point favorite. Like I said, it just seems like they're sort of the team that's made for this.
Yeah, and that's why the caveat when it comes to Trevor Lawrence and how well he's played, you look at the Jags' recent schedule, they've had favorable weather conditions, and that's not their fault. They play in Florida, and they played a team in a dome recently as well in the Lions. Now, they didn't score many points in that game. They got blown out 40-14, but when you look at their last month of games, home Ravens, which if you saw how that one ended, that was a wild finish, how they beat the Ravens. They beat the Cowboys in wild fashion this past weekend. Quality win, we think, at the Titans, which is quality for the Jaguars because they have struggled so mightily against foes in their division on the road, and specifically that team. I think it was their last 9 trips to Tennessee. They had not won, so that was a huge win for them.
I mean, even if they're bad, that's such a big win for the AFC South standings. Like,
good point.
You know, and it's almost like the NFC South too. At a certain point, 15 years from now, we probably won't remember that whoever won the NFC South was 7-10. We'll just, there'll be a banner in one of their stadiums saying they won that damn division.
Yeah, and you know something too? It's good you brought up the division because before the news of Ryan Tannehill missing the rest of the year, Tennessee was still the favorite, a short favorite to win the division.
We should say that's still like an unconfirmed report. The Titans have not made any waves about that Ryan Tannehill thing. He's been ruled out this week.
Yep.
But they haven't placed him on IR. They haven't said anything about the long-term health of Tannehill. I mean, look, the guy's probably right who reported it, but it is still a report.
True. What I would say to that, though, is if you look at the line adjustment to the division winner, I bring that up because now
it's moved massively.
Jags are the favorite to win the division now at -150. You could have got them at plus money as early as yesterday, at plus 125 in a variety of places, and DraftKings being one of them. So now they're a favorite, which makes this game interesting because if you're going to take the cheese on the Jags and how well they've played, how well Lawrence has played, because you brought up how bad their defense has been. O-line's banged up. It's a game they kind of have to get, kind of, if they want to get a grip of the division tonight. But of course, as you just kind of laid out, they don't necessarily have to because it's still going to be a mess in that division because you don't have to have all that great of a record to win said AFC South. So that's interesting that they're -150. If you like the Jets, don't play this, right? If you like the Jets tonight, you might get a better number on the Jaguars if that's the case. And you might be right you are right that it's not official, but you're onto something because the Titans are no longer listed as a division winner possibility because of the uncertainty of Tannehill. If it's going to be Malik Willis the rest of the year, that's great to point out. So I wanted to throw that up there just to show folks that, yes, the Jags are now favored to win this division coming down the stretch.
You make a really good point, though, where I would even say don't just wait. Again, if you want to bet the Jaguars but don't want to take them at this number and think the Jets might win tonight, don't even just wait for the end of this game. Wait till Malik Willis and the Titans just beat the Texans, because they probably will.
Yeah.
This weekend. I mean, he's done it once.
Doesn't do the Houston Texans any good to win.
No. I mean, they've been frisky the last couple of weeks, so I don't think it's as obvious a win for the Titans as it was 3 weeks ago. But we saw Malik Willis start against the Texans. I believe he only completed like 3 passes, and the Titans still pretty comfortably won that game, just running Derrick Henry up the middle time after time after time. So I think you'll probably see a situation or you might see a situation, because it's a pretty tight game between the Jaguars and the Jets. You might see a situation where the Jaguars lose, the Titans win, and I still think the Jaguars probably have the inside track just because the Titans Week 17 matchup is so tough. And then you've got that Week 18 game in Jacksonville where these two teams play again, basically for the division.
Right. And sorry if you just said this, but the Jags do play the Texans next week too.
Yeah, also that.
Yeah, so the Jags, if they can pull off what would be technically an upset at plus 130, they are the dog tonight. They can upset the Jets. That puts them in a great spot with the Texans next, and then sets up the home game, as Gary had mentioned, against the Titans to wrap up the year, and they've already got the head-to-head win for the from earlier in the year. So are you still willing, because I know you mentioned that total, would you still play it at 36.5 on an under?
I mean, it's a really low number.
There's a lot of them this week.
Yeah. I think these are the conditions. I mean, we were sort of talking about the Chiefs Seahawks game a little bit before we went on the air. And I think there's like some weather baked into that total too. Like if that game's in September, October, I think it's not 49. It's probably like 54, 55.
Yep.
But that's going to be like clear skies. That's just a really cold game. And look, it's not pleasant. I wouldn't want to play in freezing cold weather in Kansas City, but it's really wind and rain. Those are your two big elements that affect the total. Wind in particular. Wind's the one you really have to watch out for. And just with how much the wind is howling tonight in New York, yeah, I probably would still lean towards the under. I think I would just feel better about Jets -2.5 though, if given my choice between the two.
How concerned are you, and maybe this is baked into your analysis, but how concerned are you about Lawrence and the sprained left foot? But that's been an injury that's lingered, but it was brought up that he was questionable for the week, but he will play. He will play tonight's game.
Yeah. I mean, not really. This is a questionable tag. He's now had 2 consecutive games, and they've arguably been the 2 best games he's played this season.
Right.
I sort of look at his questionable tag. There's a couple around the league where you're like, all right, questionable, cool. Like Ramondre Stevenson got listed as questionable today. Sure. Like
172
wink, wink.
on the ground last week.
Yeah, nudge, nudge. Sure, he's questionable. Josh Jacobs gets listed questionable every single week and then proceeds to run 35 times a game. So you're like, yeah, questionable. Sure. That's what we're doing here. Yeah, I wouldn't say for the Jaguars, when it comes down to just like, let's try to like remove the elements for a second and just talk about these teams in a vacuum. I think the really big disadvantage the Jaguars might have because of their injury woes. One, Cam Robinson, their best offensive lineman, their left tackle, not playing tonight. In a game that might be decided just by trench warfare, missing your best offensive lineman, not a great start. They're also missing Trayvon Walker, the reigning first overall pick in the NFL draft, their edge rusher. Even with Walker active most of the season, the Jaguars have the lowest adjusted sack rate in the NFL. That's a big reason their pass defense is so bad. They just cannot put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. That problem not going to get better missing your first round pick from this season. And I bring that up because as much as I love to laugh at Zach Wilson, and I've loved to laugh at him as much as I've loved to laugh at each of the last first round Jets quarterback pick of the last decade and a half. It's really one of my favorite hobbies. He's actually been all right from a clean pocket. Again, most quarterbacks look good throwing from a clean pocket. This is not like breaking news to anybody. However, from a clean pocket this season, Zach Wilson is averaging 8.6 yards per pass attempt. The only qualified quarterbacks with a better mark than that this season are Tua, Jalen Hurts, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Patrick Mahomes. So basically, Zach Wilson throwing from a clean pocket is as good as a Shanahan quarterback or Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, there's a lot of caveats that come with that stat, but it just goes to show you when things are functioning around Zach Wilson, many of his deficiencies are lessened. So I think this is almost like, I mean, pardon the pun, a perfect storm for Zach Wilson tonight. He's going up against a really bad secondary with a really bad pass rush, missing their best pass rusher. I just think this is going to be one of those games where we leave it going like, oh, maybe Zach Wilson's not that bad. And you're like, nah, Zach Wilson's still pretty bad. And then the rain element on top of it too. Like it's almost unfortunate. If this game's being played clear skies, Zach Wilson maybe has his best game of the season. Maybe the rain just wipes all this out anyway. And it doesn't matter about the pass rush and the clean pockets, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think a lot of the Jets' weaknesses in this game are amplified positively, if that makes sense. Like they're almost negated because those are the exact same areas the Jaguars tend to struggle so much.
And all that being said, I'm now reading your showdown strategy for tonight's game, and I'm laughing. You've got Zach Wilson as a captain pick. I almost would have stopped reading after you said Zach Wilson at 14,700. I know. I'm also not sure how we got here. I mean, that's phenomenal start to your now. There's more there, folks, but I just couldn't help but laugh and stop reading for a second and process those two sentences that you put his name as a potential captain.
It was weird. I didn't think I was going to do it, but that's sort of what, again, showdown slates are weird. That we kind of just have to put that out there. Like, he's a quarterback on a showdown slate. Like, you at least got to take a look at him, regardless of what his name is. But yeah, I think if we're kind of looking at the showdown slate now and asking ourselves, like, who's pumped up, whose value is inflated because of the possible weather conditions we're going to see tonight. I already liked Evan Ingram a lot, but I would maybe now move Evan Ingram into captain mode sort of territory, because you got to think the receivers lining up outside the hashes in weather like this, particularly on the Jaguars side, where one of them is already going to be canceled out by Sauce Gardner. I mean, we saw the Lions last week basically just sacrifice DJ Chark to Sauce Gardner. They barely threw at Chark for the entirety of the game. They're just like, hey, we're going to play 10 on 10. You just take Sauce that way, and we'll try to go somewhere else. The Jaguars have already been like force feeding Evan Ingram the ball. He's got 24 receptions in his last 3 games. Only Justin Jefferson and Keenan Allen have more receptions in that span of time. That's how much volume Evan Ingram's been dealing with.
Look at the targets too. My goodness.
Yeah. And he's also tight end. So we're talking like high leverage red zone targets as well. He's scored 3 touchdowns in this span of time. I just think tight ends, dump offs to the running backs, like, I could see a lot more prevalence of those types of passes just if the weather conditions are going to be as bad as it seems like they're going to be.
There's Ingram there, 11,400 to captain tonight. And he's creeping up the board in recent weeks. That is, if you were looking to roster the Jaguars tight end, and he's at 7,600 in the flex for tonight. What are some other angles from a showdown standpoint that you're interested in?
I would say, I think Elijah Moore is a nice value. Again, exposure to the passing game is, with each passing second, becoming a little bit more harder to stomach. But at the same time, Moore is someone who has played in basically 80% of the Jets' offensive snaps the last 2 weeks. He's priced below $5K. Yes, there's history between him and Zach Wilson. Moore's had his best performances when Wilson has not been on the field. But 7 targets last week, that's a pretty healthy amount of volume considering the Jets didn't even really throw the football that much against the Lions. I just think he's underpriced. I would also say the Jets defense is just underpriced. I was surprised they were only, first and foremost, I'm surprised and shocked they are cheaper than the Jaguars defense. That is probably more a tip of the cap to Trevor Lawrence,
right,
than it is degrading the Jets defense, or maybe even saying like, hey, Zach Wilson is a turnover factory. We got to give some credit to the Jaguars defense, even if they maybe don't deserve it. But the Jets defense is one of the best units in the NFL. To be $3,600 on a slate where the total for the game is hovering around 36 points, that something seems off there. And the fact that Quinnen Williams is going to play in this game, or reportedly is going to be back and playing in this game, full strength Jets defensive line against a beat up Jacksonville offensive line that wasn't that great to begin with. I do think the Jets are going to get a lot of pressure tonight on Trevor Lawrence. And I know he's only got the 1 interception his last 5 games. But again, these conditions seem like they're just going to be terrible. So a little surprised to see the Jets defense that cheap, and just with everything, the way it's gone the last 24 hours, the way things are trending, I just keep coming back to that price point again and again. In wanting to put it into lineups more and more.
Well, and the odds tell you too. Look at Lawrence to throw a pick tonight, -145 over on the DraftKings Sportsbook, over a half interception. Zach Wilson at -200. So you've lost any value there if you wanted to get a quarterback to throw a pick in this game this evening. Oh, and by the way, our friends over at SNY, they are reporting that Quentin Williams is in line to play. That is their latest reporting. So back to our point about questionable in the National Football League. I mean, most of the time that means they're going to give it a go in most spots. What about Garrett Wilson is now the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he's someone differing from Elijah Moore. He's someone who has thrived with Mike White and still getting the high volume of targets. How do we feel about Wilson's prospects tonight?
I mean, it depends really just how you're constructing your lineups, right? I mean, if you're someone who has Zach Wilson in there, or if you're someone who wants to have Travis Etienne in there, maybe you want to stack both starting running backs with Etienne and with Zonovan White.
Yep.
It just starts getting really expensive. And I think for me, and I feel the same way with like Christian Kirk and with Zay Jones to a certain extent. The passing games for both of these teams, I don't think this is a ceiling game for these passing attacks. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, suddenly the difference between a 30% target share and a 20% target share, when you're going from 20 passes to 35 passes, doesn't mean all that much. It really just comes down to one extra target. So the price differential between a guy like Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, obviously Wilson has the highest upside of any of the Jets receiving options on tonight's slate. No one's denying that. But in conditions like this, I feel like top end wide receiver is maybe where you fade in sort of hope again that a lot of the targets kind of gravitate towards the middle of the field. We see a lot of dump offs to running backs. We see a lot of the short, quick passing game, just with the conditions being as poor as they are. And that would just automatically sort of downgrade some of these receivers who generally thrive with their ADOT and their air yards and kind of make that efficiency their whole ball game. Again, Garrett Wilson could have a great game. I just feel like he's a pretty obvious place to maybe save some money. Zay Jones falls into a pretty similar category for me. And then on top of that, I think Zay Jones, who primarily lines up on the outside for the Jaguars. I mean, when you look at him and Christian Kirk lines up in the slot in over half of his snaps. I believe it's 52.5% so far this season. That's a good way to keep one of your primary receivers off of Sauce Gardner. I just feel like Zay Jones might be the guy who Sauce targets tonight. He might be the guy who Doug Peterson's like, hey, you had a great game last week. You saved our ass. It's your turn to be sauced tonight. And that's the thing too. Even in these weather conditions, I still feel like people are going to look at Zay Jones and go, man, this guy's been the best receiver in football the last 3 weeks. He's got 4 touchdowns. It's really that sort of like he's AFC Christian Watson right now. The touchdowns end at some point. It's just math. Like regression is coming. And I think Zay Jones, between all the factors here, the weather, the matchup, I just don't think those types of receivers tend to do well against the Jets. And they haven't done well against the Jets so far in 2022.
Zay Jones, yards prop, 44.5 tonight, juice to the under at 44.5. And receptions, he's at 4.5, unders at -165. So the odds are kind of telling you that he's due for some regression. Again, I can't help but mention, but the weather is certainly a factor in these.
The unders are going to be juiced just every prop. That's love the weather.
Any other thoughts? I think we could spend the next 10 minutes on the rest of the weekend.
Yeah,
how's that
sure.
sound? Okay. So I started off by the Arctic blast and these low totals across the league. Now you made a good point about Kansas City and Seattle, where if that game was played in September or October, you're probably talking healthy number over 50. It's at 49.5. Patriots, Bengals, that's going to be a cold game, but clear skies. But some of these other spots, like Buffalo, Chicago, there's going to be some wind and some weather impacting that game. Bears are getting 8. The other weather games, Browns, Saints, look at that total, folks, 32.5 points. That was at 31.5 earlier in the week. And Atlanta and Baltimore is another total that's gone down. That's now at an even 35. Pittsburgh, Vegas, 38. Christmas Day, Broncos Rams. That is a reflection of just how bad the offenses are.
I was going to say some of these lines, like this is a weird week of it's the first real week of like weather concerns we've seen this season. Plus, I swear the starting quarterback list for this week is maybe the worst it's been since like those peak COVID games in 2020, where guys from the practice squad were coming up to play quarterback. Like we've got Trace McSorley this week. That game between Baltimore that you were talking about earlier.
Baltimore, New Orleans.
New Orleans. You've got Andy Dalton going up against Tyler Huntley.
Oy.
Like incredible. That sounds like a lot of fun. Like Saints Browns. I mean, a total that's 32.5. You've got a Saints team that hasn't been explosive offensively at all this season, understandably.
No Olave and no.
Today you find out both of their top 2 wide receivers are also not going to play in this game. Like there are just some situations this weekend that are disgusting.
But then do you look at it and say,
I should have said Desmond Ridder against Tyler Huntley, excuse me. Even worse matchup potentially.
Who did you say?
I said Andy Dalton.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to your point with the quarterback shuffling in and out, it is sometimes difficult to keep track of. But does it sway you though to think, all right, let's play more overs to these numbers, or are you still thinking, nope, that's still too high. I'd rather be on the side of the under.
I mean, the Browns Saints game is interesting because,
by the way, that game lowest total since 2012.
So that's what I was going to say. You do reach a point of diminishing returns with hitting the under on some of these games. Like, generally speaking, snow is not the end of the world. But there does come a point, we all remember the LaShawn McCoy game with the Eagles, the Snow Bowl. That was fun, and everyone was scoring, and it was all happy. We remember the Patriots hanging 60 points on the Titans. Like, you can score in the snow. But there does reach a point when it becomes like those classic Buffalo games where it's 3 feet of snow on the field. No one can move. No one knows where the ball is. Like, there's a fine line to thread here. I know there's going to be a lot of snow in Cleveland. At the same time, I just think this number is so ridiculously low. And it might finally force the Saints to do something they haven't done all season long. I don't know why they won't just force feed Alvin Kamara. But you've now got an opportunity where, as we mentioned, no Olave, no Landry. It's going to be hard to pass the ball anyway in these conditions. Short passes, run the football against a Browns team that has not even come close to stopping the run in 2022. Maybe this is finally the game where Alvin, remember, I think he did this on Christmas 2 years ago where he scored 6 touchdowns in a game or something like that. He already loves the holiday season. Maybe it's just a massive Alvin Kamara game and we get over this number, but almost just for fun, I'm thinking about betting the over in that game.
Yeah, it's 1:00. Now it's a big slate because it's Saturday. They're moving most of the games to Saturday. Some other games that jump out, and quarterbacks, Daniel just chimed in. You got Nick Foles this week for the Colts, and that will be on Monday
nighter. Yeah.
Oh, geez. The Colts, again, in prime time. That's a team I feel like that just does not go away from the spotlight. Same for the Rams and the Broncos. Fitting they're playing each other on Christmas Day. 2 other games, and we've only got a few minutes left that I want to just get your final thoughts on. Okay, Dallas, Philly, line movement has been crazy because of the quarterback situation with Jalen Hurts. So Hurts ruled out today by Nick Sirianni. He said it today at his press conference. So it will be Gardner Minshew. Then there's also the possibility, and the chatter's been, well, does Philly want to show all their cards to Dallas in case they meet again? So if the game, and it might be predetermined, we're probably not going to know because this is what happened when they played last year at the end of the season. Philly started moving guys and pulling guys, and that ended up being a high-scoring game. Totals at 46.5. It opened north of 50 with the assumption Hurts, because there was a chance Hurts might play because Minshew attended Mike Leach's services, RIP Mike Leach. So it's like, oh, wait, maybe Hurts will play. So there were some 6s out there. The line opened short of a field goal. So that tells you everything you need to know. And now it's sitting at 4.5. What's the latest? We'll go on the weather theme. What's your latest temperature on the Philly Dallas game?
I would lean Dallas.
Yeah.
But I think the Philadelphia offense is going to be able to function.
I agree.
I don't want to take anything away from Jalen Hurts. I think he does raise the floor and raise the ceiling of that Philadelphia offense when he's in it. There are things he can do that not many quarterbacks can do. But I think Minshew is a capable backup quarterback. And I think this offense they've built around Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, it's not plug and play. Like, it's never that easy. But
don't say that. You'll offend Philadelphia.
It's a really good offense to just have to step into if you have to. Like, I don't think they'll be as good as they've been at their best with Jalen Hurts, but you've still got 2 all-pro wide receivers basically on the outside. You're getting Dallas Goedert back for this game.
Yep.
The offensive line is fantastic. Your defense is really good. And, Trevor Lawrence just picked apart this Cowboys defense last week that is without Leighton Vander Esch. I'm pretty sure there's some other major questionables. I think Micah Parsons is even questionable to play in this game. I'm sure he's going to play, but you tack together the injury concerns with recent performance. I actually kind of like the over in that game. I think I like it better than just betting the Cowboys -4.5 because this game could be a field goal either way.
Agreed. I think the totals come down a little bit too much to get suckered into thinking, oh, it's the backup. And of course, I think there's a big spot for Dak too. Dak needs the game. Dak has been uncharacteristically turning the ball over more lately. So it's a big bounce back game, I think, I think Dallas needs the game more, which was kind of how it was. Well, last year they were 12-5. So I guess Dallas in theory didn't need the game as much, but the game didn't mean all that much from a seeding standpoint. And Philly, let's keep in mind, Philly has not locked up the #1 spot yet in the conference. That is not a done deal. Okay, we got to go here in a second. I guess one last thought. How do you feel about your Dolphins? Because here's another line that opened at 5.5. Green Bay was getting 5.5. It's moved to 3.5. Are you willing to lay? Will there be points in this game?
I would lean Miami here. I obviously don't feel good about it as a fan. I've just been disappointed so many times. Them blowing an 8-3 record and somehow not making the playoffs would be very Dolphins.
This has got to be the bounce back spot, right? This has got to be the one.
I was going to say, I think Green Bay is a historically public team. It took the books a really long time to start realizing Green Bay was bad in the first half of this season.
Yep.
And they've gotten some really cupcake matchups to kind of like get back in everyone's good graces. Whereas the Dolphins played in Buffalo, they played in San Francisco, they played a Chargers team that is suddenly, right back, can clinch a playoff spot this weekend. Sometimes schedule matters in these trends. Miami's been a much better home team this season. I think they probably get it done against the Packers team where defensively the Packers have not looked good for most of this season. I think the Dolphins offense can get back on track. Yeah,
they have a hard time stopping the pass. And Tua's record ATS, Tua is 12-4 in his career at home against the spread.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, that was fun. That's it. We ran out of time. Have a Merry Christmas, Scarian. Thanks so much for being here.
You as well.
Thanks. Yep, we made it. Definitely the edition. This is the edition of we need to go. Like I mentioned off the top, no shows tomorrow here at DraftKings. There will be the sweat on Saturday for all of the games. It is a pre-recorded version. I only bring that up because lines will move. Guys will get ruled out potentially that were probably in or possibly in, or they were out. Now they're back in. So just keep that in mind for Saturday's programming. We go dark. There's the word dark, Monday through Friday next week. And then you'll be back on track. We'll be back on track with regularly scheduled programming on New Year's Day with the big Sunday slate. Thanks to Eamon and Daniel for getting us up and running here behind the scenes. For Gary and Thor, Brendan Glasheen, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. And hopefully we catch you all on Saturday for the sweat. And if not, have a great week. We'll see you in the new year. Bye-bye.